lucky enough to be speaking at a running camp about 10 or 12 years ago up in Asheville, North Carolina. And just last week I had someone come in my office, and they actually were at that camp as a young kid. Now they're actually coaching in high school. And he mentioned to me that he learned so much of what I had to say. And it's the same thing that I was talking in that published article in Coach and Athletic Director magazine. Many athletes make it look real easy. They're fluid with their running, and then some athletes have the unfortunate to where they're always getting injured, or they're struggling with their running form. Well, back in the early 1920s, Dr. Willard Carver was bold enough to say that most of the compensation rule comes from a left hip going forward and a right hip going in a posterior rotation. All right? That was almost 100 years ago. Several decades later, Dr. James Zink went into a hospital and he did an assessment with nearly 1,000 patients. And he discovered, too, that there was a myofascia compensation rule that went left, right, okay, which confirms what Dr. Willard Carver said so long ago, that the left hip initiates that anterior rotation and a posterior rotation with the right hip. So, if you have 90% of the population that way, some people have an even exaggerated pelvic imbalance, which means those athletes are unfortunate, have to have a higher risk with their injuries. All right, that other 10% have closer to a balanced state, which means they're in closer to flexion or closer to extension with their hips, or a lordotic spine, or a flat flexion spine. All right, so what happens is athletes cannot be trained in the same way. So if you have athlete number one over here with a large discrepancy in their core, meaning high risk, and you have athlete number two that falls in that 10% range, closer to balance in the iliums and the sacrum and the low back, those two athletes have to train differently. You can't expect athlete number one to have the ability to train in that high mileage during the summer preparing for cross country like athlete number two is. Often I hear so many times is how athlete number one wants to do what athlete number two is, but he can't. This athlete over here is high risk. His program has to be designed around his abilities in his musculoskeletal system, his risk to reward. Does that make sense? So everybody can't train the same way. Even though this person over here, this athlete, has the desire and passion to train as much as this person, he can't because he has a high risk. Does that make sense? So, but here's the beauty part. This athlete can get the knowledge to understand his imbalances. He can manage those imbalances with the proper knowledge. He can understand that he has to do more either flexibility work, more stability work than athlete number two. But he can get the same results in performance-wise because he's got knowledge and education of who he is. Same goes with coaches. If the coaches don't know their athletes' abilities outside of just their passion, desire, and their times, they need to understand, the coaches need to understand what they're doing to their athletes. If you need help identifying what weaknesses are in the body, what the iliums are doing that creates that long leg or short leg discrepancy to where the athlete is prone for a collapsed arch, a laterally rotated foot, an internally rotated knee, a hip that's not working, a low back that's not stable. It's easy to identify these and then put that knowledge into the training program. I can come out to your school, your campus, and I can help you identify these weaknesses. Then you can put in the proper plan around your athletes.